Hi, everybody. Welcome to Shop Shock. That is Shop and Shock. Deanne and I recognize that change and choice are overwhelming at this point, especially in retail. And we decided to come together to talk about what's happening in the culture, what's happening in retail through an optimistic lens. There's so much to talk about. There's so many things that are happening, and they could go wrong, but we love retail. We think that it's always going to be there in some way, shape, or form. And talking about it and monitoring it is the fun part of what we do. So I'm Chuck Palmer. I'm a digital product manager. I focus on consumer-facing applications like digital signage, e-commerce, self-checkout. And
I'm Deanne Campbell, and I have 20 years of experience in retail design, strategy, and operations.
Should we talk about how we met? We met I think we were both consultants on a project.
Right? We were working on Starbucks to be.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That was really interesting.
Starbucks project. Oh, it was fascinating.
Why not? It was fun.
And they were blown away by what we did as well. Yeah. So yeah. We can't divulge, but everything, but NDAs.
I know I had some funky ideas about how to use beacons and machine learning video.
Yeah, fascinating. Well, one of the premises for this show, we'll just talk a little bit because the name is odd. But we love the name because it was based on a book from, I think it's the 70s, called Future Shock, where the premise is technology and change move faster than people can process. And the trauma and psychological stress that's caused by change and technology development moving too fast for people to deal with. And we're kind of in that situation today in the retail industry, especially where technology is developing almost faster than retailers and consumers can navigate and understand and get their arms around comfortably. Everyone is blindly throwing themselves out there and testing and trying artificial intelligence without fully understanding what it's going to do to them in the future. They're just reacting and grabbing onto it. Same thing with self-checkout. And now they're ending up dealing with some of the ramifications of that and removing it. And it's consumers are getting whiplash with things coming in, things going out. Retailers are dealing with the cost of not knowing what's coming next. And how do you create an infrastructure and a training program that deals with change at this pace? And so that's really kind of the premise of this podcast that we wanted to talk about. And we also wanted to do it through an optimistic lens because you can navigate it. You can succeed. There are retailers who are killing it out there still to this day, who've been through even more change. We've talked about that in a previous episode. And so, and we wanted to have some fun with it too, because retail is also fun.
For attribution, it's Future Shock by Alvin Toffler, published 1970. And it had a pretty big impact. I know I was in my formative years in the 70s, and I remember it and being excited about it because I wanted to fly on the space shuttle and, have jetpacks by the year 2000. So that didn't happen, as it turns out. Well, I remember. So today we're talking about AI and merchandising and how it can affect. I was trained as a merchant, and I believe that there are some fundamentals that will never change, although some of them probably will change. And, that's usually in the math, the way we calculate value, the way we calculate consumer interest and engagement have been added to the retail math and retail fundamentals. But with everybody putting AI in their positioning statement on LinkedIn, it's interesting to sort of actually put your heads around how AI could work in the things that and I think that helps us make sense of it. And so when I put my buyer's hat on and I think about the power of what, and I'm pointing over here because that's where my Chat GPT thing is. One of the key things I love about being a merchant was putting together an assortment and seeing how things go together, how they sell off of each other. And I was taught to be very intuitive about it, to look at the numbers, but interpret them in a creative way, because we all know that the popular purple sweater is only going to be popular for so long. You need the next thing and the next thing in the queue. And so originally when I started thinking about this, I thought, okay, AI can help with the numbers. It can do predictive analytics. It can talk about, SKU rationalization. We can talk about all sorts of things when it comes to like hard data, right? Mm-hmm. But, and this is where, people usually make themselves feel better about technology. The part that's human about it is the creative intuition, understanding that silhouette makes sense on the street and why people are wearing it and how do we interpret it. That could, that's seen as that human realm. But I also could see how with the right learning, with the right inputs, AI could do that too. And that part is, we need to think about it, about harnessing that responsibly. Yeah. And, or not, even if it's gone without any parameters, without any checks, I'd like to see Levi's put together a completely AI driven assortment just to see what it looks like. Yeah. The Gap could be doing that. Yeah. And being transparent about what they're doing and how they're doing it. I'd like to see, because I think that would demystify it a little bit. There's so many things that it can do. I mean, if you understand AI at its core, then there's also the sort of layer out that is the generative part, the thing that generates stuff. But AI can also be just operative. It can just be driving things in the background. And so we have a tendency to focus on the generative part that is like creating things. What I think can happen is the purchase decision experience, whether it's in store or online, is going to be affected, and how that is going to be different from where it happens, I think. Deanne, you spend a lot of time in stores. What do you think is like the ideal future state of the shelf level experience with an AI context?
Well, it's really interesting to me because at the end of the day, as human beings, we're a puzzle. 66% of us expect brands and retailers to completely understand our unique needs. Mm-hmm. And yet, 75% of us prefer a human being to help us when it comes to some purchase that's very complex or very emotional. Mm-hmm. If we don't understand how to buy a TV, for example, which is a very hard thing to buy because we don't buy them very often and there's a lot of detail, we prefer a human to explain it to us and rather than a machine. And yet 54% of Gen Zs and millennials prefer any way to eliminate personal interaction. And so those things completely conflict with each other. And if you in surveys, 43% of consumers have said they explicitly prefer self-checkout over traditional checkout. And so you have this conflicting set of needs with, in some cases, the same customer. Net promoter scores are higher when clienteling tools are used as opposed to when they are not used. Yeah. And yet at the same time, if you don't use personalization, where retailers do use personalization, which is driven in most parts by technology, basket size is lifted. And so there's a huge benefit to the retailer for using technology. There are consumers who are saying they explicitly prefer technology and backing away from people. And yet there is a tremendous benefit in using humans and a need for it on the other side. So retailers are kind of in a position where they have to have both. And so at the same time, AI, I think AI is brilliant at examining all of the data in a surrounding neighborhood and understanding the demographics, and then coming up with the ideal planogram mix. And AI can customize that for every single store. And so you are lifting your revenue to the maximum potential. But AI is terrible at storytelling, terrible at cultural nuance.
I think that it could with the right learning. That's the thing about it. It's an infrastructure, right? And with the right teaching. So if you teach it with the intent of a good buyer, let's say, and you also have the operational support to like customize an assortment, customize an environment. I was doing some quick research over the last few days about this, and I can tell that like the AI that's attached to Google searches, it was so ill-informed about this. It said like one of the benefits of AI in retail is that each store can be unique. And I'm like, but the reality of that is stores can't do that at scale. You can't like reconfigure a store on a dime. It costs a lot of dimes to do that. Even just a floor set, I mean, that takes a lot of planning and work. Can that happen faster now? Yeah. Can it be more responsive now? Yeah. But you have to have people physically moving those things until those
exactly
fixtures.
That's at the end of the day, it still takes a human to move all those planogram changes around.
Yeah, until the gondolas act like the robots in a warehouse and can move on their own or move at a plant. I mean, I can see that in the future. Yeah, I know. But do you want to, like behaviorally, do you want to go into a Target and have it be different every time?
No, definitely not.
You need your pathway. You need, if there's anything that as I've been thinking about this, I'd like to see the mobile app know my list. I put my list in, or it just listens to me and magically knows what I need. Something as simple as helping me move through a large store, a Target or a Walmart, with efficiency. And we all know, especially the people in Minneapolis, know the sort of dynamic of the procurement and the impulse buy in that shopping experience. Yeah. You go in for what you need and you take a loop around, that I think we need to start thinking about things like that as part of the merchandising mix, because we have the tools now, or potentially have the tools now, to guide that and to personalize that. So we've been talking about personalization for a long time now. And you can't personalize a shelf right now until we get, like Star Trek level technology where it just becomes, like a holodeck or whatever. But that precludes discovery,
Well, exactly.
And you want to frame these things out. So that if you think about it, I've got half a dozen things that I need to get at Target. It could very easily show me where those things are, what's the most efficient way to get through the store, but also like ask or encourage you to take a loop around and see what's happening in the electronics department or the men's department, and really sort of frame out the visual merchandising and like digitally merchandise it. I think that we need to broaden our thinking around merchandising, everything from product assortment and how it fits together to audio and smells, whatever that word is, or I don't even know. When I'm in a Target, I know that their app works and I can do like inventory searches and directional work in there. Where is the toothpaste again? And it will show me it's in row B6 or whatever, and they did a really good job of plotting out their stores, digitizing them, standardizing them, and connecting that to the inventory. That is a lot of digital transformation, so to speak, right?
Right.
And now that they've got that baseline, imagine really tailoring the assortment, not just the sort of expected predictive assortment, but if we can use the merchant's mind, maybe enhanced with AI, to present other stuff that's cool and interesting and engaging, that will differentiate the brand. And
exactly, yeah. A lot of people talk about the word experiential. They throw that word out there. Stores have to be experiential, and people's minds automatically go to, jugglers and music and fire breathers and fancy stuff, and you've got to have discos in the back, and it's this big expensive thing.
retailtainment.
Exactly. No, I mean, yes, that exists, and that's great for a Scheels or really experiential means you walk into a store, the store is clean, there's thoughtfulness to the lighting so that it highlights the product beautifully and it showcases the product well, that the shelves are stocked and they're not empty, that the shelves are stocked thoughtfully. And imagine a Target where you would go in and the way it used to be is there was interesting product on the shelves. But now imagine if artificial intelligence could recommend the ideal planogram for those shelves, and then a week or two later, change it up a little bit. So it's not moving the towels over to where the home housewares were, but you're moving the colors around a little bit and brightening it up. Now it becomes, you're injecting a little bit of the treasure hunt mentality. So when you go back the second time, a week or two later, things look and feel a little bit different, and it's a little more exciting. You're injecting energy in there, and AI has informed that decision. What correct period of time to wait, what the rearrangement of the colors should be, what you've done 2 weeks prior, 2 months prior. And so you can constantly refresh that in an affordable way to keep that little bit of treasure hunt mentality, to subtly signal that if I don't buy this today, it might not be here tomorrow. It's subliminally telling you that there's scarcity, even if there's not.
What you're talking about there is a deepening of the definition of a planogram.
Right.
If a planogram it's seen as a static set, right? And that is an operational constraint. It's human resources, it's physical resources. It's easier to set it for the season and let it go. That doesn't have to be everywhere in the store. I mean, we have feature areas, we have focal areas, we have things like that. I think upstream, using these tools upstream to understand what that end game experience is going to be is also an interesting part of this. Knowing that the presentation of towels and sheets is going to be dynamic, then as a buyer, I'm thinking, what colors, textures, patterns do we want to add in there to highlight or frame out or whatever? Can AI do that? Probably. When it comes down to it, I'd like to think that a human will always be there at the last, sort of that last mile, making it right, making it right for the customer. There's a lot of stuff that we learned through consumer segmentation about lumping people into groups and trying to manage the chaos of the individual. That, remember one-to-one marketing, and we didn't have the computing power to do that. When I started in retail, I was like, wait, I only have category level data, sales data. Like, I was like recent college grad whose favorite class was inferential statistics. I'm like, how can I infer anything from a broad category like that? But then we just didn't have the data, And now we have such SKU level data. And if the SKUs are set up correctly, if the architecture is right, which is a magic and art and science in and of itself, is SKU architectures. Can AI help us narrow down the broadness of segmentation, right? And get it closer and closer and closer to the individual. On some categories, some products, there's not a big variety of consumers, right? Toilet paper, everybody needs it.
Yeah.
Let's say there's some choices within there. But when it comes to fashion, when it comes to personal care, when it comes to cosmetics, and it comes to medicine or home decor, that's where things can be, where you get this sort of chaotic, like soft data stuff, right? And that's where I think AI can really, really help us, because it can help us buy the right things for those folks, but it also can help us delight those. And to your point about experience, I think what we've all been talking about is meaning, and because everything's an experience. Right now, we are having an experience. It's very, I think it's a misuse of the word. Actually, it's a proper use of the word, but a misuse of the interpretation or what it means. I've always thought that we have to be paying attention to meaning. What is meaningful to a consumer? We are multivalent. We have different values and different points of time, right? When I'm looking at toilet paper, I'm like, I know the one I like. When I'm talking about maybe a new sweater or some new pants, I'm like, can I wear a crop top? Probably not, but maybe in some cases. I'm experimenting with it, and
I'd pay to see that, or maybe I wouldn't.
Well, that's a whole other social media platform no, I'm just kidding. But that's really a nuanced difference. And there's part of me that's like intrigued by what the technology can do and how do we unlock that and what we can do with that. But there's also a part of me that's like, don't ruin it. Let it be magic. Let it be like the fun of paying attention and coming up with assortments and seeing how it works. That's the old school way of doing it, right? And how much of that is happening now, I honestly do not know. Most of my consulting work has been in the technology space and not necessarily in the merchandising space. So I don't really know how those things are happening now.
What AI can do is, in a sense, if you look at a company like Zara or Shein, what they do is, in fast fashion, is they very quickly read social media trends, quickly design those trends and get them in stores in small quantities to sell. Read the media, design it, get it in stores, sell it, and it's what has built their business and made them so successful. Artificial intelligence, AI, is going to level that playing field somewhat and make that model accessible to almost everyone. So now AI can go out and immediately read all the trends very quickly and create insights and give those insights to virtually any retailer, and it could even share those insights directly with manufacturers at the same time as the retailers.
Remember when everybody needed a website? And I remember clients coming to us and saying, could you do a website for us? And yes, I'm that old. Companies would end up talking about who they are to a graphic designer who's trying to figure out how to make a website. I mean, this is a very specific point in time. And it sort of pulled back the cover on the fact that most companies didn't know who they were. They didn't have a brand stance, a voice, a consideration, a position. It was sort of like, well, we sell these things with like icing on them.
Yeah.
And it wasn't about being a baker or the craft of icing or whatever. And that sort of forced people to start to have that conversation and think about those things. And I think for the better, because what happened there was we started to actually pay attention to meaning, to what these things mean, to what a brand means, why a customer would spend part with their money for you. And now we have this, like, I think this next level where everybody's trying to figure out AI, and it's forcing them to consolidate and look at how these things stack up in ways that are completely new, but at the core are similar. We still want new things. We still want fresh things. I still want to maybe think that I could pull off a crop top, and because that's human nature, and does AI affect that? I think that there's arguments to be had that the technology is affecting behavior, and that behavior isn't as constant as I know I thought for a while.
Time is going to tell what direction, the quality of AI going forward. It's already showing signs of quality, not so much, as it begins to eat its own data and eat our terrible social media data.
Yeah.
And so it has a tendency to flatter. Yes. And so it might tell you that you look good in that crop top, whereas a good human salesperson might be a little more honest and direct you perhaps to a different.
That is a good salesperson who's like, you know what, today's not your day. Yeah. That's the magic of a good salesperson, right? I think that, but here's the thing, AI is doing that to cover their asses. Right. That's what
they're trying to build a bond with you too. They're trying to gain your addiction.
Right. You can train it to not do those things. Right. Yeah. But when you set up the right guardrails, you get a recognizable thing that is delightful and new and fresh. Right. You should never, with a client, this is what I would say to students, you should never be surprised. You should be delighted when the designer is presenting to you or whatever. Now think about that. If we can codify typeface, we can codify color, we can codify tone of voice, it's happy and not like pedantic, whatever. When you start to build the DNA of a brand into an AI, it can be a real support mechanism. So think about brands that have definite like brand attributes. Nike, there's a million of them, but it always seems like it's from Nike. Or if you think about fashion, Paul Smith menswear is another one. Does an incredible job of that. Tom Brown, they have these vernaculars, these design languages that could be codified, and within those constraints can be infinite. And it's interesting because there is this possibility that if everything's codified, then you can train a model to perpetually create new things. That's both exciting and scary. And, as I'm saying, is the sort of 15-year-old sci-fi fan in me is like, wow, that's cool. Yeah. It's also frightening to the 61-year-old adult. So,
well, if they will, because human nature being what it is, it's easy to get people to add. It's hard to get people to subtract. So it's the whole retail model of, if you subscribe to something, people tend to stick with it, even though they don't want the subscription, because they just are. It's not that they're lazy. It's just the friction of unsubscribing is sometimes too much for them. So asking people to train something to do something different than what it already does is often difficult. And that could also be the same for retailers, is asking them to train it to do something other than what it's already doing.
Or what we know works. I mean, that's why we keep seeing sequels to, superhero movies.
But there are retailers out there who are already getting it right. I mean, they tried, they dipped their toe in the water of AI. They've done a good job with the human factor, and now they've successfully blended the two. So if you look at Nike, you mentioned Nike. So Nike Live stores, they adjust their local assortments using AI data, but they still rely on store staff to contextualize that and that SKU, those SKUs,
Mhm.
and to build those local community ties to ensure those SKUs resonate. So they're blending the two, the human and the AI, to really get those planograms dialed in correctly. Sephora at the same time, they give their associates the mobile tools, just like Warby Parker, to blend the online and offline data seamlessly. And they can add personal anecdotes. If they're talking to somebody in the store, they can add in a personal note that can also inform online interaction. So it's really an interesting partnership between AI and human staff.
Yeah, if I'm in a Warby Parker and I'm trying on glasses and I have to sort of go through and pick out the wide ones because I have there's a big brain in here, so it's a wide head. And if that is in my profile, and then I go online and look at it, it should prioritize wider. It should present to me, because online you can reconfigure the merchandising. Like, you can super personalize it with the right information in a profile. Has anybody done that? I don't think so. I don't know of any brand that has used the existing technology to do that. We all have to sign in with our email address and whatever in order to pay quickly and get it sent to the same address over and over again. Yeah. But what about sizing and preference and things like that? I still think that's a possibility. You don't need AI for that. What you need is the will to experiment and see how it works for your brain. I mean, I use these tools to merchandise that experience, to frame out and contextualize, as you put it, that experience, so you, as a brand, have this ongoing conversation with customers.
Yeah. I was in an Athleta store last weekend. I just needed to buy some new workout shirts, and I normally buy a small, and I tried a couple on. They were okay. The salesperson came over and she just said, "You know what? You need an extra small. I wear these all the time. I find they fit just a little bit too big, and I really recommend. They're great shirts. I love them, and they wick away the sweat really well. But I think you'll be happier with an extra small." I tried it on. She's absolutely right. I would never have thought of trying on a smaller size, because I don't normally wear an extra small. Yeah. And she made a sale, and I bought more shirts, more of the same in different colors because of her. I would never have done that with AI. AI probably wouldn't even have thought to recommend the smaller size, because I normally buy a small. So it's her personal experience, her knowledge of the product, and her ability to size me up there in person. Yeah. And that made the sale. And it made a multiple sale.
Counter to the data, right? All the data would point you to smalls. And that, knowing that a tighter fit on an athletic thing wicks away in this material, those things could be codified. They could be trained, and AI could be trained to do that, make that suggestion, but we haven't thought of it that way yet.
Right.
And I don't know if we want that, but I'm saying the technology can do that. And does that inform the folks in the store, or the one person that ends up being in the store, because that's where we're headed, right? If there's a human in the store, it's going to be one person. It could happen. They could be, that could be part of the process, is let me see what, we can personify these things and say, like, Julie, our AI assistant, it's
well, I would like to see as AI starts to inform our planograms, our product selection, they start to speed up our product design. Athleta has had a rough Q1. Their year-over-year sales are down 8%, but they're owned by Gap. Gap is actively investing. They're getting some new design talent in. They're really focusing on refreshing their design, their products, the product mix, and they're actually starting to turn the brand around a little bit. It used to be one of their star performers, and I think it could be again. They're making the right moves. So looking at a store like Athleta, they could use AI extremely well to personalize their stores to the community, to inform the design selection, to figure out the social trends and quickly pivot to products that match those trends and really elevate their sales around that AI-informed data. But then for their stores in their physical space, they could use AI to tell them where to put product, to help them move that product around, to keep their experience fresh when every time they walk in the store, to keep the visual excitement going with a little bit of a different experience in where the product is sitting in the store. They could adjust the lights, they could adjust the signage, adjust the music periodically, depending on the time of year, the weather, etc. That could technically lead, as we've talked about on a previous podcast, to eliminating the need for a store manager position. There's a big cost in there. Take that money and funnel it into floor staff, who are really the ones facing the customer, who actively lift sales. Put that money into keeping as many floor staff, customer-facing floor staff as possible, and create that AI manager position instead of eliminating the floor staff and making them artificial intelligence.
Yeah,
I think that would be a far better use of AI to create the management of the process, the training, the informing the planograms, the product selection, but keeping those human customer-facing people and maximizing their talents and making that merging those data points. It would just be so powerful.
And I think that with the idea that it could eliminate a store manager, that could be seen as frightening. But if you think
you're
about,
not eliminating it, you're
offloading the drudgery of operations.
You're digitizing it, which would probably make the regional manager position a little more important.
Exactly. That's exactly where I was going.
But you're eliminating
the regional manager becomes
cost
much
level.
more of a conductor.
Right.
Yeah. And the regional manager can be more of a soft, nuanced manager across the different locations, the different staff, etc.
They can own the P&L for the region or the district, however the business model is set up.
One of the things that came to mind as you were talking about these different components is the space between. Very often there is a chasm between disciplines, visual merchandising versus actual merchandising, the presentation of the product versus the selection and assortment planning, the lighting. Those things can very easily in an organization be three different departments, right? But the customer doesn't care about that. The customer is, looking at these things in a way that it all comes together, right? And in my merchandising days, in my Macy's days, back in the ancient times, there was a, GMM, a general merchandise manager, who oversaw a selection of like men's clothes or whatever. And part of their responsibility was looking at it holistically and saying, we've got the right mix of suits, we've got the right mix of separates, we've got the right mix of accessories, shoes, etc. And Jim's handling shoes and Julie's handling suits and ostensibly that person was as much analyst as magician, as artist, and can we inform our models going forward with that and make better retail staffers. To your point, does the person on the floor in the store become the most important person in the organization?
Absolutely.
Could
Absolutely.
be.
And it should
Could
be a
be.
well-paid position that they promote from within. It could be a potential career position, a reasonable career position. It may not make high six figures, but it should be a position that you can be proud of. And just like there are professional waiters who consider that a career. You
Yeah,
should be able to
absolutely.
be a professional customer service person in a retail store.
But that means there has to be will toward that goal. There has to be shareholder value somewhere in there, and getting from here to there is probably going to come from a disruption. It's going to come from, honestly, Apple could have done that. Apple could have, because they came into retail not knowing the rules and not giving a crap about the rules, doing it their way and anticipating what customers are going to want, or telling customers, they got to the point that they, whatever they did, people would want. And I talked about my one retail experience with them last time, and I think that they are missing a key component of that experience, and the meaningful part of that is the tying it all together. When you offer a credit card and a high-end device and different types of financing and accessories and queuing in the store, all those things, it's not hard to test that, by the way. It's just some anthropological or right along research. And I don't know if retailers do that anymore.
It's a tough thing for a public company, because the business model has now become so skewed towards shareholders that there's very little wiggle room for a retailer to make a long-term decision. If it's a private company, that's a different story. And you see a lot of private companies like Von Maur, and hopefully now Nordstrom again, who are now allowed to make long-term decisions, and they're very successful because of that. And they do invest. We talked about it before. Von Maur's employees they don't work on commission. They're well paid. They have the lowest turnover rate one of the lowest turnover rates in the biz. They have employees that have been with them for 10, 15 plus years, and they're incredibly well trained and talented.
And I would imagine they can work in any department if needed. Right. A salesperson in cosmetics could pinch hit for a maternity leave in Suits because of the culture that's the mortar between the bricks.
But here's the thing. I have never met a floor staff employee who wanted to do a bad job. Exactly. They may take the job because they need a job and they know it's low paying, and of course they would love a better paying job, but they sincerely want to do a good job. They don't like doing a bad job. And if they had more training, they would appreciate it. If they had more support, they would appreciate it. They're upset when they can't do a good job. They're upset when other systems in the store or in the organization fail them, which cause them to do a bad job. And that's the biggest part of the reason why they leave, more than pay.
There's a lot to be had there. And with AI and other technologies, if we were using those with it as a way to support that meaningful experience in the store between the store staffer and a customer, even if it's a quick transaction.
Talking about what AI can do for the store, what I would love to see is there's beginning to be enough data. I mean, we don't have long-term data, but there's beginning to be enough data that AI does improve results on the shelf. So far, people who are implementing AI to generate store-specific planograms are seeing a 1% to 3% lift in sales. There is also that reduction in waste. If you have green sweaters in Ohio, and they're not selling, but they are in one store, but they are selling in a store in Pennsylvania, and you can get those green sweaters to Pennsylvania, then they'll sell, and you won't have to dispose of those sweaters. You won't waste those sweaters. So AI informing that where those sweaters are selling has resulted in a 5 to 10% reduction in waste and going to spoilage or distress stock. And so take that cost,
or landfills,
eliminate the manager position, gradually eliminate the manager position. And those two things, you've freed up a huge pot of money. I would love to see that invested back in frontline staff.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's probably going to be funneled off to shareholders,
Yes.
but it would be really nice if they could invest it back in the business.
Yeah, the idea of almost every time a piece of technology is deployed, like self-checkout,
yeah,
it's seen or it's framed out as this will allow the staff to do a better job and focus more on customers. Well, I can say that that's not really what's driving it, right? It's labor costs, it's reducing the number of people in a store, and those people end up doing more stocking the shelves than they are helping customers, right? They're doing operational things. And that, I think that contributes to this degradation of the experience and why we keep talking about experience, right? I always sort of err on the side of optimism and creativity, and I still think there's room for this to make delightful, interesting experiences for customers. How they get to those things is going to be different, but I think they could be more robust. I think they could be more fun. I think they could be.
Well, that's experience. Yeah. That's experiential. When you walk in the store and everything is there, that you can wander the aisles. And that's also people talk about convenience. That's another word that I get irritated by, because convenience doesn't necessarily mean fast anymore. Mm-hmm. It means easy. So when you might take longer, but it requires less energy, less effort. And so walking into a store and walking up and down the aisles and just finding what you want, grabbing it, and going and walking out the store with it is so much easier than any other method of shopping. And so that is convenience, rather than having to go jump through hoops and scroll to find it online, order it, wait, unbox the package, etc., deal with returns, deal with whatever.
And we see that technology out there, and it's there, but it doesn't mean it's right for everybody. And so we have to think about this when we're sitting at our front of our screens in our cubicles or whatever, and trying to think about how this applies, but understanding how it works, understanding its core competency. And I'm talking about AI and the process of training it. There's a reason why they use the word training, because it's nuance. It's like training an athlete, training, working with an expert. It's important to move away from generalizations and get down to the nitty gritty.
Well, I think it's time for Retail Be Crazy.
Yes, absolutely.
It's your thing. Do what you want to do.
Well, in this section, we talk about something wild and crazy, fun, whatever strikes our fancy, but it's evidence that retail sometimes has completely lost its mind. Case in point, Dove. Dove deodorant.
Dove deodorant. My God. Yeah. Oh, geez.
For those of you who are not watching but listening, this is a billboard in London, England, where Dove did a one-day marketing campaign of smelling the billboard. It was a sensory experience where you could actually, it was smell-o-vision, where you could actually smell the billboard.
Oh my God.
And there is a well-appointed gentleman reclining in his bathing suit, man-spreading, and a equally well-appointed woman who is twerking in the appropriate position to twerk. So
Yeah, it's yeah, this whole thing about, I mean, this doesn't happen very often anymore because every brand or every product has pushed it to the limit. The creation of bad breath, we know that was like created by, Scope or whatever.
Yeah. And my apologies. This was not Dove. This was Sure deodorant.
Sure.
I don't know why I said Dove. Maybe it's because that's the brand I use.
Well, all of the brands are basically taking the same I think it's just the same product, and they're saying, oh yeah, you can use it elsewhere on your body. And all of a sudden they're trying to make us think that
they're trying to get you to buy more product,
right? Yeah, absolutely.
It's fine, as population densifies, this is going to become a real thing. Subways are crowded. Well, they had a camera on this, and it was all in fun. And I think you can have more fun in London than you can in the U.S.
True.
Things like this, but they put a camera on it, and they had somebody standing by to get sign-off permission to use the camera clips on social media. And the reason I chose this was because we have this huge fallout from Sydney Sweeney posing in jeans and posturing in the US. And it's 2 weeks of chaos. This was up for a single day, and it was all over social media for 2 weeks. It lifted Sure deodorant sales just from that one day of billboard. Mm-hmm. There was no negative connotivity. There was no negative talk. Nobody had a conniption about it. There were no campaigns to complain about sexism or anything, and it was just taken in fun, even though the sign says "Sniff these meatballs," and people actually did. There are pictures of women sticking their heads right between the man spreading and sniffing the meatballs. So,
oh my God.
So I hope they didn't smell bad.
I don't know if I want the answer to this, if I really want to know the answer to this, but I'm assuming it's like a pleasant smell once you get to it.
One would hope.
That should be the surprise, I guess.
Yes. But okay. I just thought this is
fun.
A good sign. Retail be crazy. Yes.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So butter cows. This is not necessarily new, but I'm based in Columbus, Ohio, which is the home of many things, not the least of which is the Ohio State Fair. State fairs are like bastions of extremes, and you think about the idea of sculpting butter, and there are lines of people that want to like walk through these exhibits and look at butter cows, and it's real butter, and it's sculpted, and it's is it art? I don't know. It's just it's fun, and I love how state fairs are like they celebrate the weird foods, and this one, I don't know, this sort of altar to corn dogs, and there you go, and it's it's so over the top. But an Ohio State fair or any fair corn dog is a unique treat. And this year on the Midway, there were several sort of like, we're going to take this to the nth degree and create these like altars to corn dogs. I didn't get a single corn dog. I got a bucket of mini corn dogs.
Oh my God.
There are like 21 in there, and I'm the only meat eater in my family, and so I had a typical fair experience and ate too much.
Oof.
So
it looks like a heart attack on a stick.
It is, and so.
Well, retail be crazy. What can we say?
Yeah.
Well, and that's our show for this week. Thank you very much.
Great.
We'll see you later.
Great conversation. Bye, everybody.
Bye.